We have less pros and overall ranked players grinding Valorant than we've seen in a long time. But what are the reasons why pro players are upset and leaving the game, and the other various factors affecting the overall enjoyment of Valorant at the start of 2024? Let's talk about it. Now, throughout this season so far, we've had an overall very low Radiant population, where normally Radiant is stacked at the max capacity 500 players, but recently it's been as low as 300 for pretty far into the act. And in addition to that, there are a lot less players in Immortal as well. And while the reset came not too long ago, overall, there are just less people passionately grinding the game as of the new act in a way that we haven't really seen before. People aren't consistently grinding the game on ladder at the high elos as much as they were before, and really this is a problem that is rampaging through every single rank and every single player. But before we hit up those issues, specifically pro players are having a lot of frustration right now, specifically with one, the lack of consistent tournaments, where Valorant is a game specifically centered around its esport, with a slow overall tournament structure where there's just not a lot of tournaments coming or places where people can compete. And then there's a separation between tier 1 and 2 that has come with franchising, making it so there's an even bigger divide between players who have quote unquote made it in Valorant and players who have not. And a lot of players are spending much of their time scrimming in preparation for the next season. They're not grinding the game nearly as much for ranked anyways. Now, this wouldn't be enough to make it so people aren't grinding ranked, because a lot of times pros will use it as practice in the same way that everyone uses ranked as practice to grind to get better, but they're just not doing that nearly as much right now. And within the overall community at large, there's a lot of players that are feeling pretty frustrated about Valorant, and a lot of it comes down to these major things. Number one is the map pool, and you might not agree with this, but for a lot of people, the maps that are in rotation right now are not the ones that people really like. There's a lot of ones that are being left out that people really enjoy, and there's a lot of ones that are in that people find very frustrating. And it's bad to the point where a lot of players don't even want to grind because they want to dodge a lot of these maps. They don't even want to play them. There are people that are legitimately dodging these maps, and it also begs the question, should there be a map pick system where maybe 3 maps pop up, or like 2 maps and a randomizer like old COD games at the start of every game? Or should there be separate ranks for separate maps and have people being able to just queue up for the map that they want to? Or that creates situations where there's players that are like Immortal 3 Ascent only, right? Or something along those lines. We've seen a very similar thing like with Counter-Strike Global Dust 2 onlys, but when the Premier mode came out in Counter-Strike 2, which is more similar to the Valorant normal ranked mode, it got more popular. More people play that, the Premier mode, than the one map select mode, but at least people have options. And I think options are good, but then you do divide the player base. So let me know if you think that there's any solution to the map pool problem in Valorant right now. Another thing that is kind of creeping into Valorant right now, and this is true for pretty much every player who's been grinding this game, whether you're a pro or just a ranked grinder, it's the stagnating balance. And in a way, Valorant has become almost too balanced, which is a weird thing to say. In a lot of games, people are constantly complaining about balance issues and things like that, but with Valorant, things have been more or less balanced, like compared to other games, very balanced, honestly. And of course, things have not always been perfect, but something that happens a lot with Valorant is there's just small tweaks, right? Things are kind of locked into a state where things are healthy, and then there's just little small tweaks here and there, but nothing that ever massively shakes up the meta, which I think is really good for a game that is esports focused. But that's kind of the problem, where there's a certain odds being created between pro players or just grinders or the competitive state of Valorant like as an esport, and then just people wanting to play a game and be interested and have fun. The people that just want to grind ranked and have fun, they've been doing it for like so long that things are getting a little stale, and a map here and there and a new character here and there isn't enough to shake things up. They want something more dramatic to shake up the game, but if you do that, then you risk messing up balance. And I do think that introducing a weapon like the Outlaw is kind of like dipping your toe into adding something more interesting, but the problem is if you keep doing these little small things, it's not making it interesting enough. You would need something really large, but with any large change, you're messing up balance for the esports side. So you see kind of a catch-22, right? They can't make things that interesting or shake things up too much because you mess with the competitive integrity of the game. But if you don't do that, then the people that aren't actually playing Valorant to be a pro or to become this amazing ranked grinder at the highest ends of play, they are left eventually to get kind of a little bit bored of the gameplay loop. Like, it's an amazing gameplay loop, but once you've done it 10,000 times, you are like, hey, it's the same thing. I want a little bit more mix up than this. And where's it at? It's probably not coming. Now, as far as the solution to this, I really don't have any idea. I think it's more or less on a balance, and right now we're kind of playing it safe, which I think makes sense, like I said, for the esports side of things. And that's kind of what we got to see looking at Valorant right now. Is it seems that Valorant is, you know, aiming to be a 5, 10, 20-year game where changes aren't going to happen a lot if you look closely from patch to patch. But if you take a step back, it's going to be here for a very long time. And if you like take some time off and come back, then the game is much, much different. But it's going to be a slow grind to get there. We're not going to just jump from one meta to the next in a way that a lot of other games do. And I think that that is important, though, for the longevity of the esport, even if in the intermediate, it's a little bit stale at times. Now, this doesn't mean that Riot can't do anything to offset some of these feelings, and I think it really comes down to features. And this is one of the things that a lot of people, everyone, content creators, pros, players alike, are kind of all in cohesion with, is specifically the features that are just not there. Stuff like a replay feature, which has been basically talked about since the start of Valorant. And when other games have it that are not even that competitive, Overwatch, and games like Valorant that are centered around an esport don't have it when they could really use it, it just creates a disconnect where, okay, it makes sense that you're not going to do crazy balance changes because you don't want to shake up the meta too much to mess up the esports of the game, but does that not mean you can't just spend the time instead developing new features for the game and less skins? Okay, joking aside, I think the reason that a game like Counter-Strike, for instance, where it's really stagnant, like the meta doesn't change all that much at all, and it's like the same game for a very long time, can stay fresh and interesting, when Valorant, a game that should on paper be automatically more fresh and interesting because the more diversity and the fun characters and just a lot of the variance that you can have from game to game sometimes comes across as a little bit stale, mainly has to do with the features in between the start screen and the rank system, right? And right now, there's none of that. There's nothing. Valorant has like a couple of modes. It has a couple of things to do, but it has a pretty lackluster warm-up mode. It doesn't have a lot of other features, and that's just not true for a lot of other games. Giving players something else to do, giving players something else to experiment with and have fun with. So the major thing is, I think when players are not grinding ranked in Valorant, they're not playing as much ranked in Valorant. It's not like they're doing other things in Valorant. They're just not playing Valorant. Other games you might have it to where maybe people aren't grinding the rank system as much, but they're still staying in the ecosystem of the game. That's not really happening with Valorant nearly as much because it's basically ranked or nothing, and that is something that I think needs to be addressed, and probably will, but on a longer timeline than I think most of us would like. So ultimately, is Valorant struggling right now? It's having a little bit of a lull, but it's still doing good overall, and really you got to think about Valorant as a game that thinks in years, not a game that thinks in months or weeks, as in you're gonna see changes and additions come like grains of sand. And yeah, looking at it, if you're just staring at the sand every single patch, every single month, and you just see little tiny grains of sand, you're like, okay, when are we ever gonna fill up this freaking bucket, right? But if you take a step away, you look back, and all of a sudden it's there, you know, it's filled to the top. And that's kind of the analogy that I'll give. Valorant will get there. It's just gonna get there kind of slow, and I do think that especially when you make a game entirely around your esport and there's not a lot of hype esport events going on right now, it definitely feels like the soul of the game isn't here right now, but it will be coming soon as some of these big tournaments are coming up, and I think they're gonna be really hype. At least I'm excited. But let me know how you feel about all this down below. Thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Alright though guys, before we wrap this up, let me tell you a little bit more about SkillCapped. So we offer a 5-division rank up guarantee, and that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that. Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really works. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium Valorant guides on the internet. We add new courses every month with over 1,000 guides curated into 50 courses no one can compare. We also have a direct line of communication with subscribers in our Discord so that you can get connected immediately to some of the best players in the game who will respond to any and all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving. So that's gonna be all for this one today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.